Hey, 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 everyone. Happy Friday. We made it to the end of the week. Here we are, live coming at you. Joined today by my good friend Donovan. Um, and hopefully we have a fun topic for today. How are you doing today, Donovan?
I'm hurting, but I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. For little update for Donovan was as is maybe you should tell the story, but as is the case, the worst injuries happen in the most benign situations. As I understand it, you were walking.
I wasn't even walking. I made the critical error of trying to take a step. My knee decided, nope, don't want to do that. So it tried to evacuate through the only process it knows how, by slipping to the side of my leg. The other part of my leg was like, well, there's nothing keeping me here, so I'm gonna head on my own little trip. And it was an adventure for sure.
Yeah. And so Donovan blew his knee out a couple days ago, about a week ago. Taking trying to step over
Yep.
something, I think, in your shop, and then you were out there all alone, being like, "Help somebody!" Oh, it
Yep,
sucks.
it does.
Oh,
But I'm still
so
here, and this is going to be fun. I'm ready for this.
ah, so well wishes for Donovan's recovery, but hey everyone, let us know where you're coming in from. I trust we have some of our friends and our regulars joining us from various parts across the world, but we always hope that we have some newcomers as well, people coming in to learn some tips and tricks, or to contribute some. And today, that's what we're going to try and do. We called this my favorite things. These are just I started to try and list out a couple things that I thought, if you're self-taught, which many of us are, these are things that you might have missed, or just if you've been using SketchUp a while, a lot of these will be familiar. A lot of these come up in the forums a fair amount, but hopefully there's a few tips in here that maybe are new to some of you out there. So
You know, you
holler at any
say
time.
self-taught, but this is a community where a lot of people can say that they're Tyson taught. So I'm sure we have a lot of those out there too.
Well, thank you. That's kind of you. Uh,
People are already asking if you intend to sing today.
well, I do request. No, no, no. What are you talking about? Uh, you know what? The best way to get me to
I
sing is
may
just
I may
like,
or may not have implied in the posts on the forums that you would sing your favorite things, and people would have to join the live to find out if that really
oh,
happened.
I have no voice like Maria. I mean, that would go poorly. Okay, so I won't promise singing, but I won't promise there won't be singing, because if the mood strikes. Let's get into this. Let's jump in. So again, yeah, holler. Let us know where you're coming in from. Let us know what you have planned for the weekend. Thanks for dropping by, and holler and interrupt us at any time if you have questions or suggestions. I'd love to hear some other suggestions here. So the first tip that we're going to talk about is one that some of these things have improved with time, just little tweaks to the SketchUp inferencing engine over time. And it used to be in the past that when you were moving objects, so I'm moving this, as I move this around, SketchUp generally will try to keep an object in its same plane, generally. But as I move it over other objects here, you can see it sort of jumps up and around, and it actually works. This didn't work as well as it does today, but it's pretty smart. And another thing that's nice about this is that with some of the object or the group or component snapping points, you can sort of see through this and snap some of those points as well. It is possible, though. Let me see if I can get this to work. the way. So if I wanted to say, let's move this one over here, and I wanted to move to this block behind me, it's not snapping. And a quick way to, make it to work is like to find an inference to lock it back. But one thing you can do is just toggle X-ray mode. And I've got this on a keyboard shortcut. If you toggle X-ray mode, it gets rid of that sort of inferencing to plane or preference for plane, and you can just snap to anything, anywhere. So that's the first tip that I think is really useful, is have X-ray mode quick, easy access. We're going to talk about some shortcuts in a little bit, but you, through X-ray mode, can snap anything to anywhere and not have to worry about it getting caught up in the view. Because again, if I orbit, I probably could orbit to a different view where I might be able to get this to work. Sort of. Still didn't get it there. But X-ray mode will make that easy. All right, that's tip number 1. Turn X-ray mode on and off, especially when you're moving objects around.
Speaking of which, I have no segue for this. We got people coming at us from North Carolina, from Minnesota, I can read Minnesota. One from, I have not heard of this place before, so I'm probably going to say it wrong. Liège. Correct me if I'm wrong. We have people from Syria. We have people from, oh my gosh, the chat is just all over the place. We have a worldwide audience from Egypt as well, from the UK, from across the pond, as they say. We've got Houston, Texas, all over. As it is with our lives every week, worldwide audience across multiple platforms. I try to throw this out for everybody that's on a platform such as LinkedIn or Twitter/X or any other platform than YouTube. If you have any technical difficulties, jump over to YouTube at youtube.com/@SketchUp. Join us on the live there and get that direct connection.
Nice. Thanks, Donovan.
Oh, Holland, Finland, Connecticut. You've got to reach, Tyson.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it really is. And I know you're not here for me. You're here for some good SketchUp stuff. Or for
apparently
Donovan.
there is a big group of people that are here for your singing, so we can't, count those people out.
Oh man. All right, so we're going to talk about cardinal points. This is one of those that, again, if you just learned to draw circles and arcs, and you're like, cool, I can draw circles. Maybe I can even change the number of segments, and I'm familiar with that sort of thing. That's all well and good. Sometimes when you're just riffing and you need to change the size of circles quickly, you would have to get the scale tool or redraw a circle, but sometimes you can use what's called the cardinal points. If I hover over these are polygons, these are circles. If I hover with nothing selected over, you see that the entire circle is selected, but as I move around, there's a point where that highlighting of blue disappears and I have just one point. That is the cardinal point. And if you grab that point, you can actually resize a circle, an arc, a polygon. So if I grab this edge, it's going to move the whole thing. But if I keep moving around, a circle typically will have 4 cardinal points. One at, as you would guess, think of cardinal directions. Arcs will have 1. So I can resize these arcs. And polygons, depending on the number of sides that are drawn, you may have to move around and try to find the one that's going to actually let you manipulate it. But you should still be able to find a point that will let you resize. And you should be able to do this to some extent even if you have pulled some of these up into cylinders or objects. So if I, again, use the move tool, again, nothing is selected. If I have this circle over here selected, and then I use the move tool over here, you know, that's not going to allow me to resize this. So nothing selected. As I hover around, I can create this as a cone. Over here, I could move and find the cardinal point between these two arcs because they're the same. So see how it selects this line? And I could resize this whole face that's between
somebody's
the two
out
arcs.
in the chat. When I select circle and enlarge it, it becomes a polygon. How can I fix that?
Say that again. When you enlarge a circle, it becomes a polygon?
What? Oh, when I the message says when I select circle and enlarge it, it becomes a polygon. How to fix that?
Well, if you're so forgive me, I'm not trying to be condescending. If you're very new to SketchUp, everything is going to be essentially a polygon. There are no true circles in SketchUp. So when I draw this circle, but yes, if I enlarge it, what you're going to find is it is made up of a series of segments. That's just true of anything. So you can change the number of segments. Please stop me if this is not the question. But if you're trying to draw a more, a circle that has more sides to it so it renders more as a full circle, when you're drawing this circle, by default, it's going to have 24 sides. And as I'm drawing this, I could just simply say, I need that to have 60s, hit enter. And now it has 60 sides. S is important because if you just say 60 and hit enter, that's the radius of 60. But I was saying I want 60 sides. I could also select this circle, go to entity info, and I haven't pulled it into anything, right? This is only works on a flat circle, and say I need this segment count to be back to 30. Segment count in SketchUp is a kind of a critical thing to understand and work with. Don't work against it. Some people just say, oh, there's no true circles, this is useless. Not true. In many circumstances, this works just fine. Most 3D models are going to be tessellated anyway when you export them. I know there are circumstances where a true circle is important, but for general in SketchUp, you just want to work with your segments. So I hope that was somewhere in line with the question.
Speaking of shortcut keys, since you are talking about shortcut keys, some people have chimed in to say what their shortcut keys are for specific things. What is your shortcut key for X-ray mode?
Mine is Shift 5. And I'm gonna not justify it because everybody has their own logic. I'm gonna explain it in shortly why that and a few others, why I chose those. But yeah, shortcuts are fun. They are individualized. There's usually a good reason if you've customized them.
I don't know the full story, but I do know that there's kind of an inside joke in SketchUp with how you use shortcut keys as compared to everybody else. So I'm excited to hear the story behind some of these.
There's not a good story. I just have like 90% customized shortcut keys. I use very few of the default ones. And mostly that becomes from like an old habit of using some other 3D software, and I like translated them over. And then half of it comes from often using a Wacom tablet, and that I wanted to map all of the navigation keys right to like the same spot, and that so push pull is P, but that's all the way at the other side of the keyboard, so I made it B. Rectangle is R. That makes sense, but I made it C because it's right there. And zoom, pan, and orbit are Z, X, and V. That doesn't make sense in most cases, but for me, it's a very habit formed.
Yeah, a lot of people have chimed in saying that X is their shortcut key for X-ray mode. So
Yeah.
to each his own.
As long as you have one and use it, then you know that it's so useful. Okay, so the next one, so we'll talk more about shortcut keys. I love shortcut keys, whatever they are. The next thing we're going to talk about is that when you use follow me, and I did a skill builder on this fairly recently. If you're using it on a flat surface and using an arc or often a Bezier or something, it's not going to meet up to that surface correctly. So let me undo, and we can see this, because essentially, even if we draw an arc, so let me draw another arc, and I will, change the number of sides to say 30 sides. So it has a lot more sides than is typical, because our default arc is 12. And I pull it out for a half circle. You're still going to have a little bit of a gap here, because this arc is not going to come in perpendicular, exactly perpendicular to the surface. It's always going to come in at a slight angle. So when you are drawing something coming from a flat surface, what you can do is draw just a little bit of a straight line. I'll copy that over. And that little bit of a straight line will give you the way to mesh correctly into a surface. If you are drawing an arc and you're like, I don't have room for that little straight line, then just come in here, find the midpoint, and then use that and as your little bit of a way to get in there. That way your arc is not bigger, but you still can draw in. And meet up the wall. And like I say, that's true for Bezier curves as well. They'll come off at an angle, so it helps to have a little bit of a straight line to work with. Yeah.
So somebody chimed in the comments saying, I've always struggled with how to pronounce Wacom. Wacom.
Yeah.
How I've heard it from one of their reps, and I'm taking this as gospel, I guess, is what do you do with the moles in the arcade? You whack them. So that's how you pronounced Wacom, right?
I will back you up on that. I've also talked to people who work at the company. That is, but in sympathy, I have always pronounced it over the years a variety of ways, and still.
Yep.
Yeah.
I myself have been in the Wacom camp for many years until I met that one rep. Now I have to remind myself, nope, it's a Wacom. That said, are you using a Wacom tablet right now, or is that something that you don't use anymore?
I don't tend to use it that frequently anymore, and I do use a vertical mouse, and that makes all the difference. For me, I started using a Wacom tablet just because of regular mouse, but this alleviates a lot of that. I do love using a Wacom tablet. I don't have a nice way to say this. Those little tweaks that get made in SketchUp, there are little tweaks that got made somewhere along the line that don't like the sensitivity of a Wacom. Like I struggle with some of the tools. So I can't define that. I don't know what that is, but there's just little things that to me used to work better, and they don't work so great anymore. And I can't exactly pinpoint what it is, except for the offset tool. That doesn't work at all for me with Wacom. Wacom.
All of the above.
Yep. So the next tip is I don't know if it's a tip so much as like we're just gonna go through if you're new to SketchUp and new to the inferencing engine, one of the things that I think can be most helpful is to draw a random shape of like, say this is a house and draw some of the parts of the house off axis, like this, and then resolve the roof. This is just inferencing and inference locking practice. So, just to back up a little bit, because I was drawing this while we're talking Wacom, so I'm just going to do, I've got my, I've got a very bad, this is not going to be a great resolution, but that's part of the point, is that we just want to resolve whatever is going to be. So I'm going to draw this, find the parallel somewhere over here, draw from this midpoint, find this. I'm going to lock it and draw just somewhere back here. I need a midpoint here, so I will just draw a line and then draw this line. I will hold the shift key to lock it and then touch on this edge so it lines up there, and then draw back to here, and then I'll just draw a line from there, erase it to merge it, extend this one past this edge. That's one of the tips that we're going to talk about too. I love now just drawing past an edge and then just use the eraser to clean it up. It's just a fast way to work. But now let's draw in a couple ridge lines. Erase these and see what we get. Select these edges, use the move tool, find the blue direction. And it's okay. This is kind of messy, but that's kind of the point, is like some of it worked, some of it didn't. It actually could work if I then maybe selected this one too, because I had forgotten this one. So that's a little better. But whatever it is, I'm not going to worry about roof pitch or anything. The whole point is this, is be like, okay, now I need to fix some of this roof. So I will use inference locking. Back here, lock this. Then I can erase that. Because of again, this weird way that we did this, we've got this weird triangle. If we needed that pitched, well, how would we go about that? Let's just find where the intersections are. So I will start an edge here, hover over this roof, hold the shift key, and now I'm locked to that surface. And so I'm just going to draw some random shape, but I'm still holding the shift key, which means I'm locked to that surface. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Find that blue on face, lock it, and come back to here. And that will give me those two intersections. And actually, we should be able, with this third one, just to find where it all ends up. So, well, that
Interesting. I would never have thought about going about doing this like this.
It's not. I'm not even saying it's the best way. Right? This is just a way to practice inferencing. Inference locking. You can lock.
And for those who may be curious, yes, I fall in the newer to SketchUp camp, whereas Tyson falls into the
boring old guy,
very professional, ordinary old guy camp of SketchUp users.
So, And this is one of those things where you do an exercise one way and then you're like, could I do it a different way? I'm not sure, but I will try. That's why I like just doing random roofs as practice for inference locking. If we have a little bit of leftover geometry in here. Another useful thing for X-ray mode. Oops. Let's do a little bit more. What's that?
Lawrence in the chat. Lawrence, this is fantastic. He wrote his own lyrics to SketchUp's favorite things. This is so great. Circles on faces and cubic extrusions, bright colored backgrounds, grouped objectly fusions, textures normal and projected on rings. These are a view of my I guess would be favorite SketchUp things. I hope I enunciated that right. That's fantastic. I tried to come up with a little jingle of what I thought the SketchUp lyrics for that song should be. You won. Those are fantastic.
Nice. Wow.
Normal and projected on rings. Okay. Textures normal and projected on rings. These are my favorite SketchUp things. So choice. Chef's kiss, Lawrence. Fantastic.
That is fun. All right, let's see if we can get that to weld in. Okay. All right, so we've drawn a little dormer. Again, a nice exercise. Down here, we'll draw. Here's another little sub tip while we're dealing with inferencing that many of you will know. When you're trying to select a path for follow me, often if you don't want the whole surface, the best way to select just the edges is to double click on a surface, then hold the deselect modifiers and get rid of the edges and surface you don't want. So I want all of this except for this side because I'm going to do some weird thing this way. It's just a quick way to grab edges as opposed to that, which is not slow, but that's a quick way to grab some edges is to double click and then deselect what you don't want. Sometimes that's faster. So take that, offset. And let's move this whole doorway so that it's in line with this dormer. But what would we do? So we can hold over this edge, because again, this is not on the axis. So I'm going to hover over this edge, hold the shift key. Now I'm locked to it, and then I can pick anywhere on this door and line it up exactly. And I'll just do the same thing over here. I'll lock to this edge first, then grab this edge and line it up. So lots of ways to use inference locking to lock non-axis. As you know, the down arrow key, or as many of you know, down arrow key will do something very similar. Some of us, before the arrow keys were prominent, we just were used to using the shift key. This to me goes back to the reason why I have shift. Let's say we're drawing. I'm gonna grab this and move it, but I will lock it so that we're moving. And over here, we're going to do the same thing. Create a door. Oops. But here, if I'm trying to line up with this dormer over here, I can do what I just did. So I've locked to this edge. Then I click on this point to start moving it. But I've got the shift key held down to lock this. And so for me, because I was so used to using the shift key, I created a whole bunch of shortcut keys on the shift key associated with the shift key. So while I'm locked, I hit 5 and I hit X-ray mode, or I hit 1. This is not going to do anything right now. I'll show something else. And it'll toggle hidden geometry or hide rest of model or hide similar things. So I used all of these things that are common in component editing. And so shift 1 for me is hidden geometry. Shift 2 is hide similar components. Shift 3 is hide rest of model. Shift 4 is close components. Shift 5 is X-ray mode. Stuff like that. And I did that so that while I'm locked like this, I can easily toggle those other aspects on and off and stay locked. That's why.
See, now I understand. This is great.
Again, different workflows, different people who are more comfortable using the arrow keys may not find that. But for me, because I'm so used to using the shift key for locking for most of what I do, I just found it very useful to associate some of these things with the shift key. So that is that. Oh yeah, and we are basically covered this. Another useful thing in SketchUp, if you haven't done so already, is make sure you. Oh no! No, that's for cowards.
I see you also like to live dangerously.
Learn how to select.
Granted, with what you're doing, I don't think it's totally imperative that we save the model. Correct?
I saved this model from the start. So, no, we're safe.
We're safe. Okay.
I don't want to have to go again.
Saving is for cowards.
Yeah.
That needs to be a shirt for Aaron right there.
Oh, and I count myself a coward. Of course I love saves. Learn to stretch geometry. Learn to what you can select and how you can move geometry and manipulate geometry in line with other geometry. And you want to do that plus this surface plus this door, but leave the dormer there, right? So just learn to that's another one of those things that you can manipulate a lot of geometry if you learn to make a good selection and how you can stretch at least along straight edges. Okay.
Oh, I don't know if you have this in your upcoming arsenal of favorite things, but a comment came in about graveyards. So if you weren't going to talk about graveyards,
when we get back here to paste in place, I'll own up to my graveyard habit.
All right.
Graveyards. That is definitely one of my favorite things. That's a good call out. If you're new around here and you don't know what the term graveyard means, it's just we'll call it a term of endearment for my habit of copying geometry, making iterations, and then changing my mind. So making a new iteration and changing my mind and making a new iteration. And by the end of it, I've got like 10 versions all in the same model. So I've got a graveyard of changes, which is messy and which you walk away from, and a week later you come back and like, what was I even doing? I don't know which is the current file. I don't know which changes are the most recent. And you're in trouble, but that's a graveyard.
Oh, I was thinking something else. Maybe Boneyards? See,
I
what
think
I
that it's the
thought,
same.
okay, what I thought is like you have all of these shapes in a model, but you make a copy of that or a component and you lay it out on a flat surface somewhere like behind the model or beside the model. So if you need to go in and make, changes to a particular component, you could find it in the graveyard or the boneyard. Am I thinking of a totally different thing, or are we talking about the same thing?
No, I think you're thinking of something different, and I think that is useful if you're like making an assembly and you just want all your pieces easily accessible. I mean, you could find them in the component browser, but like if you just had a whole bunch of greeblies or something. But no,
Mhm.
I suspect, at least in reference to previous stuff that we've done, my graveyard at least is my bad habit of leaving all my changes along the way.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's just that for me at least. This one, this tip is when you bring an image in, and I just drag images in, and I don't import them as photos, but that it's doing the same thing. If somebody knows differently, if there's an advantage to importing, you can import images as photo map, as textures, as a photo. Um, when I'm doing a reference image, I will just drag the image in, which is the same as importing as a photo. Here's the thing: when you import as a photo, though, I want to trace over this, and I don't want the this part of it to get in the way. And I've got a lot of space to work on this one, but sometimes you don't, and so you're manipulating your model, and then you accidentally erase your reference image. So it's nice to be able to lock this image, but if you bring it in, you cannot lock it as is. So one of the things that you might try is you say, well, that's fine, I can explode this. And now it's exploded into the geometry with this texture applied to it. And I'll just group this. And then as that group, I can lock it. Perfect, right? Now I can erase it. I set that up. Don't do it this way. We're going to show you a better way. But the problem for doing it this way, so now I'm going to group my geometry. I'm going to come in. As soon as I edit my group, textures go away. And this is true even of other textures in the model. And this is in shaded with texture display mode. But if I came in and applied some texture on here, whatever it may be, as soon as I edit this group, textures go away. But I want that reference. So here's what you do instead. Don't explode it. We'll just get rid of all of this. Let me, unlock it. Get rid of this. When I bring an image in for reference, like this, I just group it. So I'll just draw another line over here, totally discard it, like it's not necessary. Sometimes if I'm mirroring something, I'll draw a line, across and select those two. Doesn't matter. As long as you have one little extra piece of geometry, you can group those together. And now that it's a group, I can lock it. But I never exploded it. It's not texture. It's still an imported photo. And so now when I come in and I make this group and I come in to edit the group, it retains the photo. And I love doing it this way. Then I turn X-ray mode on and I have this really nice view for tracing with the image preserved, but locked. So I can't erase it either. Hope that makes sense. I've shared that one before too. So like I say, reference image, don't explode it, just group it with any other piece of geometry, and as a group and as an unexploded photo, it will still show up when you're editing other groups and components.
There may be a story behind this, but there's the comments in the chat about the Sydney Opera House. And surely the Sydney Opera House is one of Tyson's favorite things. I'm assuming that's in jest?
You mean like Notre Dame is one of Aaron's favorite things?
Peggy says, surely the Sydney Opera House is one of Tyson's favorite things, isn't it?
Peggy, I thought we were friends. You know what? No, it's not, and I will never do it again. But we did it once, and I'm pleased that we at least did it once. But no, it's not one of my favorite things. You never want to model the Sydney Opera House live in SketchUp again. That is not an easy thing to do. But I mean, yeah, no, absolutely. My favorite thing, my favorite. Okay, well, let's throw it out there. What are some of the memorable lives that have occurred? They're probably the most memorable ones, or the most difficult, the most dramatically fail ones. But I don't know. What do you guys? What were some decent lives that we've done in the past, if any come to mind? We've done so many. Done so many. Go back.
Do we have
and be
a
like,
count for how many, what the total number of lives is that we've done on this channel so far?
I don't know, but we've done them. I mean, I started joining 2 or 3 years ago, and Aaron was doing them before that for like, we got like 5 years worth.
Yeah. Speaking of 5, for those that don't know, we have just hit 500,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is a big number. We're really excited, and part of that excitement is we are putting together a little event around hitting 500,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. If you want to be part of that event, head over to forums.sketchup.com. Near the top, you are going to see a post about the 500,000 subscriber event. Click on that and submit your model for that, because we're all getting together in a few weeks, and we're all gonna be able to celebrate this kind of historic occasion for hitting 500,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel. So head over to forums.sketchup.com, find the link, submit your model, and be part of our festivities.
Nice, good call out. Yeah.
Somebody's yelling "Cobra, Cobra." I'm assuming that means something.
That was Aaron's most shameful failure. I think he floundered for 3 hours straight, and then finally threw his hands up and punched the computer and walked away. It was something like that.
Yelling "Cobra, Cobra" while he did it?
No, he tried to model a Cobra Mustang, like an old school, I think 30-year-old Cobra Mustang. He tried to model a car live, and Aaron, he doesn't prep hardly ever, and he was just like, "Yeah, I'll fiddle my way through it," and it went disastrously.
We got people saying, let's see, Cobra, Cobra, of course. The one where Aaron made a scale model. The host for that one was really good. Scale model.
I don't know this one.
The train series.
That was
the
fun.
Snow Globe House series.
That was fun. That's great.
Yeah.
I love those.
The Sydney Bridge.
Oh man. That was my first. No, it wasn't my first. That was an early one for me though. Woo.
The Eiffel Tower.
That was back when I was more naive and and thought I could get more done in the time than I could.
In 2 hours.
Yeah.
Is the bridge that they're talking about that weird suspension bridge?
It's the Sydney Harbor Bridge. It's right by the Sydney Opera House. I don't know what else to refer to it as.
Okay. Somebody says the iron chair was really fun.
Oh, Aaron did the Game of Thrones chair. I think that's probably what that reference is.
Somebody else chimed in saying the Norwegian Viking church.
That was a cool one, like Stav Church something. That's an Aaron. Yep. Nice. I think we should do it's hard. I think I mentioned this sometime recently. We come into these things, we usually decide what we're doing. You know, those of you who've been around, you know that the forum posts only go live a few days before. We don't have weeks of planning of like, oh, we'll do this. But for a while we tried to, and that little snow globe house and the train set and stuff was like, hey, let's do something and spread it out and build it out. I think we should go back to doing some of those. I think they work. For us, it's a little bit like the viewer numbers overall, because you know there's the live numbers and there's the numbers after it's afterwards. Anytime you do a sequence, it just drops. It's just like it's like an immutable law of nature. And so it was easy to look at some of those and be like, maybe we shouldn't do this if our numbers are always gonna drop. But I thought there were really some really interesting topics, and it was fun to hand it back and forth.
Interesting. So somebody said the 57 Chevy bicycle.
That is an Aaron too. I think that was
That's
a challenge from Dave, as far as like this really swoopy bicycle, if I'm remembering that correct.
Colin said, I liked it when I loaned Aaron my Stratocaster. Oh, man. I just lost cred right there. Stratocaster to use as a reference. He didn't finish the whole guitar, but the body was tough.
And Colin,
Star Wars stuff. Yeah.
We appreciate you being here, Colin, and always being able to answer some technical questions when they come up. So thanks for joining us. Star Wars stuff, so fun, always fun. I'm gonna.
Somebody chimed in and said there's 635 lives on our channel. That is a lot.
That's a lot. Just so I'd love to hear some more, but just so that what I'm doing with this was just to show when you're drawing details, a lot of curving details. It may not be installed by default. I don't remember if it is or not. I think I went and grabbed it. But there's some really powerful Bezier tools out there. Fredo's created some. I haven't wrapped my head around those. I think you can go back and edit those. So like if this was something you did a lot, it would be worth looking into some extensions. But the native Bezier tool, the native Bezier extension from the SketchUp team, is also, aside from just arcs, is a really great, and I just got a shortcut here, because arcs, you have to be careful that you're not creating arcs at a point that you can't, right? Like I could not, with our arc tools, accurately represent this because it's kind of two arcs, not one. So then you have to do like, well, I would do this portion, and then I'd have to come in and do a little thing here. And especially if you want your, continuous smooth curves. The Bezier tool, draw a Bezier curve. Again, this might be, it's SketchUp created. but you might need to install the extension. I apologize, I don't remember. But so with that, I could come in and draw more complex curves that might meet this better than the native arc tools. And the thing to remember about this too is when I'm drawing this Bezier curve, I will start in here and be like, okay, that's the curve I want. But by default, there's different points of control, and I have these 3 points of control. I'm like, this last one's tripping me up. Keep in mind with the Bezier tool, this degree down here, I can be drawing and be like, oh, I want just that one. I just want to create the 2 points and 1 degree of control, or 2. I don't know actually what this means, but I'm going to change it to 2, and that way when I draw this Bezier, I'm just using 1 point here to draw it instead of like coming out this way, coming out this way. That's useful for other reasons, but just the Bezier tool is another great tool for creating some arcs that are not exactly perfect curves tangent to both ends. So that's all. When drawing some details like this, remember that the Bezier tools are your friend as well. Also with arcs, one of the downsides is the Bezier tool, you can't control the number of segments, because if you're drawing this with arcs, I will frequently be, you always have to keep in mind that this is something very small, but like if I need to turn this corner, well, this arc certainly doesn't need to be 12 sides. So then I just, arc 5, because a little bit, then coming up, whatever it is. And then maybe this one is going to be 8 sides. And it's always just a best guess, but with the Bezier tool, I believe it's 20 sides every time, no matter what. So just one of those things. Personal preference. All right. Let's get back.
Some people are chiming in with other votes for their favorite live.
Yeah.
Your lightsaber.
That one. Oh, I haven't done.
Was a pretty one too. Ty, our very own Ty, chimed in to say that he was the guest host for the scale figure video. So whoever called that guest house out, that would be Ty. And then we have a couple of people that actually voted for the Steam engine. Mechanical drawing lessons from the Steam engine. The Lego one. What?
Okay. Well, Aaron's done mechanical drawings a couple times, but I guess, yeah, specifically the Steam engine. Very cool.
Yeah. Somebody talked about the trench run, the animated trench run from Star Wars. That one was fun.
I need to learn some better animation tools so we can do that one even better.
Peter from the chat is asking, is there a native tool which behaves like French curves?
The Bezier tool is going to be the closest one. Where I showed how we can draw Bezier, one direction, 2. You can actually draw a Bezier with more. I could turn the degrees up to 4. And I've got 1, 2, 3 points of control. So experiment with that. If you really want a lot of control and the ability to go back and manipulate a curve, look into Fredo's. Help me out there. Is it Curvizard? Fredo's. It might just be his Bezier tools. Somebody in the audience will know. But there is a more powerful one. It's much more technical to use, and so.
Yeah, I have to make a confession around that. I have not used any extensions in SketchUp. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I have not delved into the world of SketchUp extensions. That's the deep end of the pool for me.
Well,
Bezier Spline and
Bezier
Fredo Spline.
Fredo Spline. Thank you. So
Yep.
check those out. Excellent. This one, what I'm setting up here is a reminder, or just again, this was a skill builder recently. Sometimes you have a shape where you don't have an obvious place to put a follow me shape inside, right? So follow me, we need the path, we need the shape. But on this case, unlike something like this, where we say, well, the chamfer corner can just go right here. That's nice and simple. On this one, we didn't have any flat shape to do that with. You can still create it, and what we need to do is just draw. So I will hide a surface or two and draw the shape I need. And then if I unhide these, I'm going to hide this one. And again, I'm not deleting it, I'm hiding it, which for me is, again, keyboard shortcut. That way I can unhide it in a moment. But I'm going to select this top surface, go to follow me, click here. So then it created that chamfer. I'm going to select it again, follow me, click here, created that one. I'll select maybe this bottom one, follow me, click. So I've created all of these, and then I'm going to unhide that surface I hid just so I could see my shapes. But again, so if you're creating objects that are, have some curves and you don't have a good place to create a starting point for the follow me tool, draw your shape, put it into place, and then sometimes you can hide one of the surfaces to allow you to, select another path and still use your follow me tool. So let me know if that makes sense. This one is one that I talked about a lot. Eric's talked about. If ever you're doing a shape, the complex shape, especially one that's going to involve arcs, you need a throwaway shape to work on. Drawing arcs out just in the free space, it's so tricky to do. It's really hard. There's no need to do it because you can just draw a throwaway surface. And create your more complex shapes, and then you're good to go. Oops, I didn't create an opening. This one I've shown a little bit before. This is one of those things too. I could bother. I just love being able to draw past and erasing. Draw past, and then erase. Anyway. So that's follow me. Paste in place. This is where because this is where I will come in and be like, okay, I want to make changes. So I will come in and I will try to remember to make, right, this is components, or actually it's groups or something. This is my bad group and component behavior. But I want to make this unique and then come in and make some changes. But I don't always remember to make something unique. So I'll make a copy then, make some changes. I forgot to make this unique. And I make some changes here. extend this out to here. Extend this one. Using locking to keep that angle. And then I come back and I'm like, I didn't make it unique. I was just exploring a change. I didn't want that to change. So that's when you take something, copy it, you undo, and then you paste it in place. Edit, paste in place, or paste in place. And because we had copied it and because of the changes, it makes this as a new component. This is also really useful, not just for fixing when you mess up your component behavior. This also is just very useful when I'm like, I want to draw some geometry first.
Speaking of that model you're working on, somebody chimed into the comments talking about future live streams. It will be cool to see some more of Tyson's woodworking project plans.
Thank you. I did build this out. I built this desk for my daughter. This one came to life. Most of them don't come to life. Most of them overwhelmingly don't come to life. This one actually did. And it was so cool.
Was that a COVID desk?
It was. It was a COVID desk. Yeah. I did build in as well this upper area that has semi-storage, but I also put a sound, whatever the right term is, an LED strip that goes in here that responds to sound. So you can change the colors, or you can just play music and it will start pumping out different colors of stuff. And then it also is open down here, so the colors. So it's very fun. Just as a side note, let me hide this. I do this a lot where I'll make a change, something like this, and then I'm going to cut it out, come inside the component and paste it. So paste in place, many of you, again, you'll know this. It's so useful either for correcting mistakes or drawing something outside of one context and then dropping it into that context. While we're here, while we're on this one, I'm going to delete this. Another thing that I tend to do, and this can get you into trouble, but is, again, when I'm just iterating really fast, I like to make mirrored components, especially of furniture. And then to visualize it correctly, if you have, so I'm going to, these are two different components, but I want them to read as one. I want this to read as one panel. You can go into your component, select those interior edges, and hide them. Right? You can't delete them, or that would remove geometry, but you can hide interior edges and then create a seamless sort of version in the middle. So anytime you're using mirrored components, you can hide interior edges and create a visual one piece. All right. This, Donovan, is my graveyard. I have this on so many of my projects where I just I make a change and then I make a change and I make a change. And I come back and I'm like, I don't know which one is the most recent one. I don't know which one is the one I like. That's my graveyard.
It's like an adventure in your own models.
Yeah.
Some people are chiming up in the chat saying, I know it's not really SketchUp, but I would like to see some modeling being 3D printed. I think we've done a live about things being laser cut, correct?
We did do a laser cut live. And we actually are going to do that again because we have a different laser cutter at work that we want to showcase because it'll be a bit of a different workflow. 3D printing, as you know, we can model for 3D printing and we can send it to the 3D printer and we can talk about like slicer settings, but that gets out of the realm. And of course, anyone who knows this knows that like we cannot 3D print in real time. We might be able to finish something, you know, a cube that like a tiny little dice or something. Maybe we could finish one of those.
Or do
in
like
30
they do on the
minutes.
cooking shows where, you know, we have
Yes.
a finished model ahead of time.
Yeah. We definitely can talk about considerations for 3D printing, and Aaron has wrote a book recently on just that. So if you want his expertise, his best expertise, there's a book out there that he's written, but it's a great suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for those who don't know, Aaron is becoming a more prolific author in terms of SketchUp. So if you haven't seen already, there are a few books that he's written that can help you in your SketchUp journey. And I'll plug Aaron's book. Go get Aaron's book. Help support Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good guy. We like him.
Most days.
Somebody chimed in saying question and answer lives.
So let's entertain that for a second. I think that'd be great to do. I think we would be game to do it. This is not pure cynic skepticism. This is actually a few times this has happened. You're like, you do it, and then the question, hey, how would you model the Sydney Opera House? And the answer is I don't know, and we can't do that. So as long as we get questions within the realm of stuff we can answer within 10 minutes, I love the idea. Sometimes we have to set the right expectations.
Yeah. Or just gather all of the questions ahead of time and just sit and answer them. That would be a good live to get, I guess, everybody on the team on, right?
It would be, potentially. Yeah. We could hand it back and forth. I'd be curious. Anybody have any examples of stuff that they would, what they would do?
And Ty jumped in and said, we may have access to some 3D printers in the office. We do. We do.
Since Ty is with us, Ty is our scale figure still for the SketchUp for the web version. I don't know if there's a different version for the paid or free version. I don't know. I saw the weirdest thing on some SketchUp Reddit post recently where they're like, what's with the SketchUp team? What's going on here? And I couldn't reference, like they were showing this picture of Ty and I could not understand what the reference was. Ty is wearing a shirt that's like an inside joke. Have you seen it, Donovan? Because you'll surely know the reference.
Are you talking about the dinosaurs?
Talking about the dinosaurs.
All right. Yes, I know the reference.
Does anybody out there? I almost want to bring it up. Does anybody out there not know the reference? If you go to SketchUp for the web, our good friend Ty is wearing a shirt with a Tyrannosaurus and a Stegosaurus, I believe. And nice little movie reference. So while I wait for that, what I've been showing here is something that we've talked about. We've done some skill builders on as well, which is the scale modeling method, which is you can take a shape, use the scale tool, so I can pull this and sort of manipulate it, pull it some more, manipulate it some more. And so it's just one of the ways to do certain models where, especially where you have a nice reference image like this. And you can practice because sometimes you'll scale from one side, sometimes you'll scale from the center, sometimes you'll scale uniformly, all of these different things. And sometimes, like I'm doing here, you want to make sure and preserve that inside because I would just mirror this. But the scale modeling method. If you haven't done it, haven't tried it, give it a try. So I will leave it at that.
You know,
Scale
speaking
modeling.
of mirroring, I do have to say, personally, in terms of one of my favorite things recently is the mirror tool. Because I find
Love it.
myself, right now I'm working on a playhouse that is pretty pretty good fodder for the mirroring tool, because it's pretty uniform in terms of its shape and design and accents and things like that. And so I find myself more and more often using that mirroring tool and being so glad that we have it, because it's come in handy quite a few times recently.
I love it too, man. Agreed. That is a recent tool that I think they implemented it really well.
Mhm.
Totally agreed. Um, this one is just a thing to be aware of. When you're painting colors or materials in SketchUp, if you've used SketchUp, hopefully you know that everything in your model, and to me, this is not one of those could or couldn't, you know, take it or leave it type of rules. To me, this is like a super fundamental always rule. You have everything in your model as a group or component. It needs to be grouped into an object. Object being the generic term for group or component. One of the two. You can paint objects. So I could paint all these different things. If I select all these and then group them into one larger piece of furniture, which certainly I could do, and then I go to paint this blue, only some of the stuff turns blue. And then if I come in and this is already painted, but I come into it and paint it green, all of a sudden all these things turn green. This is one of those things that once you've wrapped your head around the nature of objects and components, it makes sense, but you can get really confusing because you can paint the container and you can paint surfaces. And when you have multiple nested groups and components, you can really get confusing levels of where your paint is. Is it on, the outer component? Like if I select this whole thing and I go to entity info, it shows this group is blue, even though there's some of these colors are inside. If I go inside here, select this, it shows this group brown. This one, it still shows as brown, which was the original one, even though now we've painted it green. I'm not going to say, like, there are some people who will say you should never, ever, ever paint the container, the outer container. I'm not going to suggest that should never happen. Just know what you're doing. And especially if you hand models back and forth on a team, then have some sort of, either we only paint surfaces or we only paint one level deep, or like it just gets confusing when you come in and you select something and you paint it, the surface, and now it's different versus container. It's kind of confusing. We used to think of like you could paint, if this is a component, you could create and paint the container of the component something different. And we used to show that as a way where, like, hey, you can keep the component behavior but have different materials showing. I think that's confusing too. Just be aware of it. I'm not going to say like how you should do it. Just it's one of those things to be aware of. That's all. All right.
Yeah, I do have to make a correction. Got called out in the chat. It is not the mirror tool. It is the flip tool.
Very well.
Yep.
You and I both stand corrected because I was agreeing with you.
We do.
uh, this next one, I wish, as we go through these examples, some of them are very generic, because it's just like this stuff comes up. It's hard to know when it may or may not be useful. This one's going to be a very generic example, but sometimes you've drawn shapes, not necessarily circles, but you have something that you're trying to scale. And the scale tool works on a percentage. And so I think if you go out there, you can find like tips and tricks for using the scale more precisely. This is a simple one. If I want to scale, but I need to keep the circle as a circle, and I want to scale this to these lines that I've just drawn, just remember that you can tap the shift key to scale uniformly. So I could scale it. And as long as I have, can scale from one of the ends, I can make this accurate. I could scale this to some reference edges. This gets trickier once this is 3D, because here you might, if I scale and I say, okay, oops, I want those. I want my guidelines, sorry, because these guidelines are at 24 inches and 12 inches and such. In this case, when I select this and I use the scale tool, I might pick this middle grip because I'm thinking of like my 2D version. And I press the shift key so it scales uniformly. But here we're warping the geometry outside, because by picking that middle one, right now, it's gonna, even on a little bit, it's gonna mess up that surface it's attached to. So keep in mind that in this case, we may still be able to make this work by using some of the other scale grips. So in this case, if I grab this one, press the shift key so it's uniform, because that other base is on my surface, I can now scale down to this edge. Except it's not snapping there, and that's going to bring up my next point. We can make it do so, and that I'm going to show two examples of this. Guides are awesome. If you've used guides a lot, you know that sometimes you can snap to them and sometimes you cannot. And so we're going to explore when you can and can't snap to a guide. But when you cannot, when it's not, seems to not be working for you, you just need to draw some geometry on the guide. So in that case, I'm going to grab this, press the shift key, and then I will scale to, you know what? I ran into this earlier too. Watch, I'll make it work. It'll still work. I need to draw a vertical edge. I think that will work. Shift. Oh, I thought it would work. Well, bummer.
This is why we do this live, for moments like this.
I thought this would work for us. If this won't work, then I just made this work the other day. I must have done it differently. Okay, bail out, bail out. Let's go back to this idea. Okay, sometimes you can scale accurately using references, and depending on how you do it, it may or may not work well for you.
Somebody said might need to zoom into the line.
Okay, we'll try that in a second. The guides are awesome, right? If your guides are on the same plane that you're drawing on, you can snap directly to guides. I can snap to this guide. But if I drew these guides, like I've got this little piece of tinted glass, but it's inset, let's say, just a little bit, and my guidelines, I want this to be 4 inches in from each side here and here. It doesn't matter if this was higher or lower. Once your guidelines aren't on the surface you're trying to draw to, I can't snap to them. See how that's causing problems. And if I draw a line and I'm like, how far, it's not going to snap to that line. So sometimes your guidelines can be really helpful, but if you draw just a bit of geometry, that's when you can snap to anything, no matter if it's higher or lower. Whereas, like I say, guidelines, if it's not directly on the plane you're working on, you can't snap to them. So still useful. Just remember, sometimes you need to create some little throwaway geometry. To that point, another quick way to draw that I find just useful is the scale tool. Sometimes I don't want to create guidelines, so I will just draw a rectangle and use the scale tool to scale it to stuff that I know I need. So that's also helpful. I'll try zooming in, see if this works, or we'll try. I wonder if I need to select it like this either. That's funny. I thought I just got this to work the other day. So the setup might work under like a little bit different finicky circumstances. Let me try grouping this.
Somebody says, what about the middle handle on the face?
Either. The middle handle on the face. That's in here. Ideally, because I was trying, I just deleted all my guides. I was trying to preserve one side and scale the other one. So that's what I was trying to do. Let's not belabor it. I'm sure some of you out there could figure out a way to do that. But yeah, like it's not impossible. The whole point being that the scale tool, if you create some guides, you can scale accurately in some circumstances. Leave it at that. All right. This one again will be known fairly well, but I love it. It's so useful, and that is using the tape measure tool to resize an object. And we all use this in multiple ways. You know, I'm sure I could find something that has some measurements on it, but if I needed a reference image like this and this is all I have, then I might say, well, a stormtrooper might be 6 feet. I'm going to draw a line here to here that suggests maybe that's 3 feet high. I will select the image in that line, group it, and then I'm editing the group using the tape measure tool, measuring this, which measures at 2'6" and some change, and I will type 3 feet. And yes, resize just that component. And now I have a relative scale that should be somewhat more accurate. And this sometimes you'll bring something in like this, and you'll I will model it really big, and then you need to scale it down. So let me create a line. So I'm going to group this, go in, edit it. Is this 6.7 centimeters? Measure that. 6.7 centimeters. Oops. This is another one of those things going all the way back to when we were talking about the Wacom tablet. I could never get this scaling with the tape measure to work, because if I move my mouse right now, it sort of messes it up. You got to be able to measure and let go. I could never let go of my tablet, the pin, and not mess it up. Yes, I want to resize that, and now I have a very accurate model. So resizing with the tape measure tool, definitely a favorite thing. Speaking of, I skipped this one over. I won't belay it. I know most folks will know this one. We'll give Dave R the credit. It is generally known as the Dave R technique, at Dave Richards technique, that you can take an object and this, this might be a little box, a very ornate box that is only an inch wide. And if I try and draw arcs on this while it is only an inch wide, SketchUp is going to start balking at me. And if I try and use follow me or intersect with model or solid tools, SketchUp is at its core an architectural modeler. It likes larger scale. So what we're going to do is make this a component. Oops. And we're going to do a couple things here that we just talked about. I'm going to take these edges, copy them or cut them, paste them in place. So I want to keep working on this. But I also know that this should be, the real scale of this should be only, again, let's say this is like a really small box hinge, 1 inch. So I'm going to do a couple things here. This is still a component, and this is not necessarily how you would set this up, but just so that we can do this, I'm going to select this edge, this component, and I'm going to group them, not make it a component. And so right now I'm not editing the component, but I'm going to use that trick we just talked about. Measure this and make it 1 inch. And that way my component is down at this scale too. And what we'd see at this scale is if I'm trying to draw arcs and I'm adding a lot of detail for whatever reason, it may start balking at me. Anyway, just you have to say yes, yes. As we go farther and farther down that path, it would have trouble. But up here at this large scale, we have no trouble. We do what we want to do. Continue on our merry way, and at this small scale, I set this up so badly. Is that it? I thought this was a component. I thought I had made it a component, but you know what? I don't ever remember the component dialog, so maybe I didn't. Ah. Now it's a component. The point being, doesn't matter. I can scale the outer thing, make changes, and it's going to happen on the small version. So useful to draw.
Yeah, somebody typed in the chat, do it wrong graphically, and then type the number afterwards, and it redoes it right.
Yeah. Anyway, that concept, favorite technique. Again, credit to Dave R, I think, for propagating it most prominently. That you can take something, scale it up, make changes, and even though your small version, you couldn't make them directly on the small version, but for whatever reason, you get all the detail on the tiny version as long as you make changes to a larger version of your component. I think let's call it. I already said at the beginning, I don't really have a good example. Like, just embrace that SketchUp is made up of segments, segmented circles and arcs and stuff, and just work with that. Change the number of segments, and it works well. So yeah, I don't know. I would love to hear, like, if some of these things, different spin on some of this stuff. Anybody have different ways that they approach some of these? Other suggestions for your favorite tips and tricks that you use in SketchUp? Love to hear them. So please throw them in the chat right now, or run over to the forum later and share them. Forum is a great place, of course, where many tips and tricks. I can't say that. Tips and tricks are.
That's all right. I'm picking up what you're putting down. You're good.
La, la, la. All right. That was okay. That was like hectic whole thing, but that was that. That was the idea for today. If anyone has other ideas, suggestions for topics you'd like to see us model, myself, Eric, Aaron, or revisit topics. Some of them we might. Some of them Aaron will never ever do a Cobra again. He has like sworn on his life. He will never even touch that again. That model is.
He's asking, what has been your favorite live session? Tyson.
Well, there's the ones that go, better, where you get largely done what you hope you would. Some of the early sessions where I was sort of more ambitious and just kind of screaming along were kind of fun. I am happy with the Sydney Opera House. I'm really happy that we did it. It was hard to figure out how to make that work. I think there are some people out there who understood the geometry better, probably wouldn't have struggled with it the way I did, but I struggled with figuring out how to make those shapes work. I was happy with that one. I really wish somebody brought up that Lego one. You remember, Donovan? That was so fun. And then we were going to end that and be like, let's render it. Let's make, we imported these cool Lego models. Let's render it. That crashed. We crashed several times and then bailed out.
Spectacularly.
Fantastic. Good question. I love a good furniture model. That's my bread and butter. That, you know what? Somebody brought up the lightsaber one. That one was a lot of fun. Aaron's done one. I've done one. Maybe we need to have Eric do one to be like, what kind of versions would he do? But it's always a fun topic to revisit. Yeah. Kind of like the negative, sometimes in the negative comments are the ones that stand out. Like some of the best models that went well, the train model, some of the other just object models or lamp or furniture models, they went well. The one I remember is like, I tried to do this building in Mexico City and it went terribly. Why does that one stand out? Anyway, I'm done.
So you seem to have more fun with the ones that go bad as opposed to the ones that are just kind of straightforward.
No, I don't have more fun with the ones. I'm just saying they stick out in your memory in the way that, like, sometimes negative comments have a way to grab you. I see. Like you'll get a bunch of nice. They stay with you longer. You focus on that negative one for no good reason. Good times. All right, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you have other suggestions, either for future live sessions or tips and tricks that you use with SketchUp or layout or rendering or anything, love to hear them. That's all I got. Anything from you, D?
Just a reminder, head over to forums.sketchup.com. Take part in our 500,000 subscriber event that we're doing. Please and thank you. We'll see you next time. This has been great.
Yeah. All right. I think Eric's up next. I'm not sure what's on the docket, but he always he hasn't had a failed model yet. He might think so, but I don't think he's had a model implode on him. So we'll see. I'm not wishing that on him. I'm just saying.
Are you saying there's still time? There's still time.
I'm saying there is time, but I'm also saying he never disappoints, is what I'm trying to say very badly. Eric does not disappoint. All right, all. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.